Basic design. This is stuff that you probably already know. If you've ever taken an art class, middle school, high school, anywhere, you've gone over this stuff. So I'm just going to go over it real quickly. And the reason that I am going over it is because a lot of times when students are learning new techniques or new programs, as we will in this class, you can get really bogged down in how to do certain maneuvers in the programs, and you can lose sight of the big picture, which is your composition and how well your composition is working, and you don't want to ever lose sight of that. So that's why I'm going to go over this all real quickly so that you can remember what we're shooting for. See if I can turn this off there. Okay. The 5 elements of art. These are the tools available to the artist to create a work of art. So these should look familiar to you. And there are other ones that are listed. Depends on what textbook you're using, but these are just the ones that we're going to deal with in this lecture here, because it kind of gets us where we want to be. So any work of art, sculpture, video, paintings, drawings, anything can be talked about in terms of all of these different elements. So you can talk about the line of the water, you can talk about the shapes of the shadows, the values where you've got dark mountains against light sky. Colors, you've got a very limited color scheme here, kind of muted earth tones. You can talk about the texture of the waves. Here's another example. Again, you use the same exact words for talking about the lines, the kind of movement of your eye throughout it. The shapes, we've got really kind of flat colors. We've got a little bit of texture up where the wood is. So when we are learning the programs, and I believe I took all of these screenshots from Illustrator, although you're going to have a lot of the same tools in Photoshop. But these are the kind of tools that we're going to be working with when we are dealing with line in creating our artworks. These are some of the things we'll be using to create shape. Value. We've got gradients that we can use, but also different values of our hues. Colors, lots of different ways to deal with color digitally. You're going to learn what RGB color is as opposed to CMYK. You're also going to learn about Pantone colors, how to work with color schemes, how to actually pull color schemes out of existing images. We'll work with, there's a website called Adobe Color, used to be called Kuler. And we'll talk about that. Texture, we're going to learn about gradient mesh, which is what that top kind of apple thing is for creating texture. Also applying different patterns. We're going to work with that. We also have the 7 principles of organization, which are the ways that you organize all of the elements, the line, the shape, and everything, to come up with a successful composition. So these are the 7 that we're going to look at here. So hopefully those look familiar to you. Balance. When we talk about balance in digital work, we're talking about the visual balance, the felt equilibrium among all of the parts. So we've got 3 different kinds: symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial, and I've just got a few examples of those. Symmetrical, you can draw a line down the center of the composition and they kind of mirror each other. It's another example of symmetrical. It tends to feel formal. Asymmetrical is still balanced, but it is balanced in a different way, that you don't have identical elements on both sides of the center axis. So these are some concepts of how we balance things asymmetrical. Now, you don't have to remember any of these because you are an artist. this is just instinctual to you. When you look at a composition and you're laying things down in a composition, you're going to kind of have a feeling for, okay, it's a little bit heavy on this side. I need to add a little bit of something over here. This is all just instinctual to you. But these are some of the concepts behind how we are able to get things to be asymmetrically balanced. So here's just some examples. I can't tell you why this is balanced. It's got something to do with the big sky and the little girl in the bottom corner, and there's some kind of mathematical things that are happening here, but we just understand that it's balanced. It doesn't feel too heavy on one side rather than the other. Apparently with this one, if you were to cover up this door over here, it would feel too heavy over here, but having this door and the colors help balance it out. The last one is radial. And so everything just radiates out from the center. So you're talking about things like ceramics and jewelry. Those deal a lot sometimes with radial balance. Proportion refers to the relative size and scale of the various elements in a design. So what we're really talking about when we talk about proportion is we're talking about the comparison of different elements and the proportions, whether they're expected or not. The issue is the relationship between the objects or parts of the whole. This means it is necessary to discuss proportion in terms of the context or standard used to determine proportions. So when we look at this piece, we have a concept of what size we think a cactus is, and we have a concept of what size we think a human figure would be. And so this plays with proportion because it feels out of the right proportion. We're not used to seeing bodies this huge in relation to the cactus. This is a good example. If you look at this, if we were to take away part of this, if you were to take away the boat, this could just be a fish in a fishbowl. It could just be a regular sized fish that we're used to seeing. But by having the boat in there, you can see that the proportion is really interesting, that we're not used to seeing a fish be this big in comparison to a boat. So that's what makes that interesting. Here we all understand what size a comb is supposed to be, and we also understand what size a bed is supposed to be. So that's where you get the interesting play of proportion here, because things are not the size that we would expect them to be in this environment. This just looks like a regular portrait. This is not a photo, by the way. This is a painting. But the way that proportion works with this is because this is the size of this piece sitting in a museum, and so we're used to seeing portraits be approximately life size, maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, but we're not used to seeing them be this huge. And so that's how proportion plays here. The work is actually being compared to the space that it's being shown in. Dominance is called a lot of different things. You can call it emphasis, you can call it focal point, visual hierarchy also comes into play here, but it's the idea that you as the designer or the artist have decided what the most important thing in the composition is, and you have done certain things to make sure that the viewer sees first what it is you want them to see. So there's lots of different ways to achieve dominance. This would be an example of line direction. Everything's pointing and everybody's looking at the naked lady in the middle. Also placement. Naked lady is sitting right in the center of the composition, the first place that you would look. This would be dominance achieved through contrast. So you've got areas that are almost solid black and areas that are almost solid white, and your eyes are drawn to the contrast. So the areas that are very, very light compared to the other areas. This would be dominance through light also. Also contrast. So this slide has been up here for a couple of seconds now, and probably no one has looked down in the bottom right hand corner because there's nothing interesting going on down there. So the artist is drawing your attention to this area here because of the contrast and the use of light. Isolation. Isolating something so that there's nothing else to look at. All right, so that's another way to achieve dominance. This would also be an example of isolation. This would be an example of no dominance. Okay, there's not any one place that the artist necessarily wants your eye to go. Your eye just kind of bounces all over the piece because there's absolutely no dominance, and that's not a bad thing. That's something that the artist has made a decision on. Movement is at least when we're talking about digital or we're talking about two-dimensional pieces, we're talking about the illusion of movement, how your eye moves around a piece. So this is movement through line. Your eyes just follow all of the swirling pieces, and it gives you the sense that there's movement in the sky. Through the use of line, again, there's lots of diagonal lines here. The weights of the line are changing, so there's a lot of movement happening here. Size. The fives look like they're going back or coming towards you. This would be an example of no movement. These folks have been standing here, well, apparently since 1930. There's no movement here. And again, that's a decision that the artist has made. Economy is one that is not covered a whole lot and is an interesting element to have to deal with. Economy talks about the paring down to the essentials necessary to the artist's style of expression. So it's the idea of only including things in the artwork that are necessary to the artwork and not having any fluff in it, not including anything extra that you don't need. So this is a very simple composition. There's really no texture down near the bottom of the composition. There's no texture or clouds in the sky. It was just narrowed down to exactly what the artist thought needed to be in there in order to get the concept across. Same thing here. There's not even a horizon line. It's very limited color scheme, but in order to get across whatever the concept was, the artist decided that this was all that they needed to include. Now, on your projects in this class, you're mostly going to have a specific size that I'm going to give you that you have to work within. And one of the problems that can arise when you first start working like this is you're going to want to fill up the space, okay? And so that's where economy comes in. You really need to think about not adding anything to the composition that's not helpful, that's not successfully adding to the composition, that's not helping it out any. Don't just add things just to fill up the space. Another example of economy, the designer decided that you didn't need the face. All you need is the hair to get across whatever the concept is and the skyline down there and the name. Harmony and variety are the last two, and they kind of go hand in hand. Most works of art have both of them. Harmony is the feeling that things belong together and they make up a whole. It's talking about unity. So in here you get harmony from the repetition of the figure, the repetition of the shapes of the windows and the crosses in the windows. Obvious harmony, it's just a repeat. Very limited colors. Harmony here in the repeating of the spirals on the ground and the repeating of the same colors. So variety is the difference. It's providing interest so that everything's not exactly the same. So here you've got some interesting variety because you've got a texture around the edges. This is a quilt around the edges, and you've also got text, but in the middle you've got more of kind of a narrative image. But you've also got unity because you've got these flowers that are repeating all the way through it, the sunflowers. variety. So very different areas on this. A variety of colors. The top is very simple while the bottom has a lot of shapes to it. A good example of variety and harmony. You'd get the harmony with the repetition of the cubes that go throughout it. And you've got a lot of variety with colors, but also in areas that are either completely flat or areas that have more values in them. So that's the end of that spiel. Hopefully you already knew all of those things. Let me see if I can find my off button.